Picture a struggling startup walking into the boardroom of a massive corporate monopoly. The startup offers to sell themselves for a fraction of what they will eventually be worth. The executives in the room don't politely decline the offer, they laugh the founders out of the building. That single laugh set the monopoly on a path to total bankruptcy. While they spiraled toward insolvency, the startup they mocked began building a subscriber base that would eventually reach hundreds of millions of people across the globe. Success on this scale can make a board of directors believe the rules of the market no longer apply to them, creating a blind spot large enough to hide an entirely new industry. In the late 1990s, Blockbuster operated over 9,000 locations. For most of the world, if you wanted to watch a movie on a Friday night, these blue and yellow storefronts were the primary option for home entertainment. But the process was full of physical friction. Customers had to drive to the store, navigate crowded aisles, and wait in long lines, only to often find that the specific new release they wanted was already sold out. Then there were the late fees. Blockbuster relied on these penalties to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. In many years, these fines for returning a movie a day late accounted for a significant portion of their total profit. When a business model extracts a large portion of its profit from customer frustration, it becomes vulnerable to any competitor offering a more pleasant experience. Reed Hastings experienced this frustration firsthand when a late return resulted in a $40 fee. The annoyance sparked a question: why couldn't renting a movie be as simple as a gym membership? He co-founded Netflix to test a new model. Instead of physical stores, customers picked movies online and received DVDs through the mail in a signature red envelope. There were no due dates, and more importantly, no late fees. While customers liked the convenience, the early business was bleeding money. Shipping physical discs was a logistical challenge that left the small team struggling to stay solvent while they tried to prove the model could actually scale. Solving a customer problem was the first step, but the company still had to survive long enough to convince the rest of the industry that the mail order model was a viable business. By the year 2000, Netflix was still struggling to turn a profit. Hastings secured a meeting with Blockbuster's leadership and offered to sell his entire company to the rental giant for $50 million. The meeting pitted a startup with no profits against a company worth billions. How do you think those executives responded? Did they A, buy the company, B, ignore the offer, or C, laugh? The answer is C. The executives reportedly laughed at the $50 million price tag. To them, the idea of a mail-order movie business seemed like a niche service that could never threaten their retail empire. At that time, the mail-order model looked like a toy compared to the massive retail infrastructure Blockbuster had already built. But the technological landscape was shifting. High-speed broadband internet was beginning to roll out to homes, changing the way digital data could be transferred and consumed. Netflix saw this as the moment to move beyond the mailbox. Instead of relying on the postal service to carry physical discs, they began building the infrastructure to beam movie data directly to a customer's screen. This streaming model removed the final layer of friction. A movie could now be started with a single click, providing instant gratification without the customer ever having to leave their house. Blockbuster stayed focused on its physical footprint. Their 9,000 stores were still generating massive cash flow, and switching to a digital model would have meant competing against their own profitable retail locations. Protecting the current quarter's profits kept the company tied to its retail model, while the underlying technology of the market was moving towards instant delivery. This chart shows the crossover point. As high-speed internet became standard, Netflix's subscribers climbed, while Blockbuster's revenues entered terminal decline. By the time Blockbuster tried launching digital services, momentum had shifted. They were spending millions catching a competitor with a years-long head start. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. The blue and yellow signs were taken down, and the thousands of storefronts that once defined the movie rental industry began to vanish. In a rapidly shifting market, recognizing a trend but reacting to it 5 years late can be just as fatal as ignoring it entirely. Today, Netflix is a global studio producing its own content for hundreds of millions of subscribers, while Blockbuster exists primarily as a memory. The collapse highlights 3 specific points for any business. First, persistent customer complaints are often a map showing exactly where a model is most vulnerable to being replaced. Second, emerging technologies like broadband aren't just additions to a market. They are often tools that make the previous way of doing business obsolete. Finally, a company must be willing to walk away from a profitable legacy model before the market forces that change upon them. The battle between these two companies shows that dominance is temporary. In a changing environment, the most adaptable company is usually the one left standing.